the reason why people fall for disinformation online, and why people get involved or why they fall for cult of personality. So what they basically do is instead of giving people the facts, instead they validate their biases. They validate their ignorances. They validate the things that they think they already know. Like, I'm going to use the word weird, like immigrants are weird, that trans people are weird, that queer people are weird. And when they validate people's ignorances, and so basically validating their biases, they then get involved in the cult of personality, because the cult of personality validates everything that they think they already know. And once they do that, they basically believe everything that the cult leader says. And what I've learned recently is it only takes one topic, like say, for instance, immigration, and if a bad faith political actor managed to deceive people through their immigration lies, just on that alone is enough to indoctrinate people into a cult of personality. And the person I've been talking to recently was listening to this right-wing actor, and I know that they agree with them because of immigration. And now, because of this, of falling for just immigrationist alone, falling for that kind of validation of their biases, now they believe everything that bad faith political actor says. And recently, that bad faith actor made a bunch of, and the bad faith actor was not only a propagandist online, but he's also a politician at the same time. Why is that legal? Why is that allowed? I don't know. So he's basically doing propaganda for his own party while being a politician. He's also a propagandist doing his own party's propaganda. But just because of that bad faith actor validated my friend's ignorances just on immigration, even though all the economic policies they were announcing were a disaster that only served rich people, like lowering the minimum wage and stuff like that, the person that I know believed that conference they were at recently, they thought that made sense just because they were validated in their biases. And when you validate people's biases, people will believe everything that the cult of personality, the cult leader basically tells them. Another thing why people fall for misinformation online is I think it's responsibilities. So you got all these, like, say, for instance, people that I know that are like in their 30s. I suspect, even though one of them has a family and the other one doesn't, because they're both working class, I think what it is that they've got all these responsibilities, they've got to be like this good worker, in one case they got to be a good family member, and they have all these responsibilities, and they've also got these ethical, social responsibilities they have to follow. And because they're so bogged down by all that responsibility, they want someone to validate their horrible, discriminatory opinions. People on benefits are scroungers, and we don't know who these immigrants are, and things like that. So people are believing a lot of misinformation online. They are falling for all this disinformation online is because they're feeding into this thing about having no responsibility, that, being a bad guy is a good thing, that having toxic opinions is a good thing. So that's two ways in which people fall for misinformation online. It's either down to validation of biases, or it's down to feeding into that responsibility and alleviating that responsibility of those social responsibilities, make themselves feel better. And the third thing as well is, and there's a thing I was about to say just now, people have a lack of purpose in their lives. Even if they have a family, they don't have anything like philosophy or religion to give themselves purpose. So therefore, they're looking for somewhere for them to fit in, for some group of people to make them feel as if they belong. And when these people validate their biases and their ignorances, it makes them feel welcome. And then because of that, then that feeds into validation of biases. And, with all these things all together, all these three things all together, that's what causes people to fall so hardly for cults of personality. I'm trying to think of other things. Why people could fall for disinformation online. Another thing is that it could be, because I have had a history of doing poorly in school, and how much, I don't like reading, for instance. What I think a part of it as well is that learning is hard, and learning can be boring. And I think that's an element of it too, because, following politics is really, really dense. It requires a lot of hard work and dedication to looking stuff online, whether it's reading, watching critical videos with academics and intellectuals. So I think another element of it is learning is really, really hard, and they exploit that then of the difficulty in learning. And why learn about ethics and morality when you can be validated in your hateful opinions, so that's four things now. So something I want to talk about with the cult of personality thing. I can't remember what it was. I couldn't remember what it was earlier. So if I'm spinning around the game, it means I'm thinking. I'm not thinking of anything else. Covered everything. I don't remember what that thing was, but it was personality. Right, that's it. The reason why, I've been watching a political commentator online, and he was talking about how when you call someone out on falling for disinformation, instead of getting mad at the person that lied to them, they get mad at the person calling it out. So when you got a cult of personality that's validating someone's biases, and then you question a person's biases, that person then gets annoyed for you for pointing out and attacking their biases. So when the cult of personality validates a bias, when you attack the bias, the cult member attacks you instead of seeing that they have been deceived by a bad faith manipulative cult leader. And let me end up with what makes a cult. Someone at the top always benefits, and it can be multiple people at the top benefits, and the people at the bottom just get exploited, and they get their vulnerabilities are exploited. So that's another thing as well. So like a cult leader is someone at the top always benefits, and it always has to be deceptive. That's another element. So if you're actually listening to um, a good faith political actor online, and they're teaching you about, supporting poor people, the minimum, the middle class, um, you know, human rights, ethics, economics, um, and I can't remember what I was just saying. Yeah, let me see if I can. Still not far back. How did I go from that to that? Right. So if you're listening to a good faith political actor, it's not really a cult if you're not being deceived, if you're not being manipulated, and if you're not being exploited. Because they like to say that the left is a cult, but the left isn't a cult because if the left wins in politics, poor people benefit, middle class people benefit, people that have um, have a job that has a minimum wage, they benefit. Poor people benefit. Minorities benefit. So just like it's not really a cult if it's not deceptive, and there's not people like deceptive, like critical actors, cult leaders at the top manipulating people. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Um, Anything else? So a cult is someone always at the top who benefits, and it always has to be deceptive. Yeah. Okay, I think I remember, at least I remember the point I was going to make about when you're in if you attack someone's biases, they'll get hostile, and that's because the cult leader is validating their biases. So because the cult leader's validating their biases, they believe everything the cult leader says, and when you force them to face with their biases, when they've been validating their biases for so long by the cult leader, it causes them to get hostile towards you. Yeah, I'm done. That's it. Oh, that's what I was going to say as well with with these bad faith actors online that have cult of personality. I like to call them like metaphorical drug dealers. Because when you think about what a drug dealer actually does, it's not just about selling drugs. You think, oh, well, a drug dealer's about selling drugs, obviously, but no, what drug dealers do is they exploit people's vulnerabilities. They exploit people's weaknesses. Why? To sell a product in order for them to make money. So these bad faith actors are exploiting people's vulnerabilities through validating people's biases and their ignorances. What the hell did I just say? I'll check again. Right. So the drug dealer is basically the reason why I call them metaphorical drug dealers is because dealers basically exploit people's vulnerabilities, their psychological weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, in order for profit. And that's exactly what these bad faith actors do online, is that they're exploiting people's vulnerabilities in order to, feed chaotic discourse because it feeds the algorithm more, and it enables them to get, because it feeds the algorithm more, they get more, they get pushed more in the algorithm on these social media sites. So, so that's why I call them metaphorical drug dealers, is because um, they do the exact same thing that drug dealers do. They exploit people's vulnerabilities. They exploit people's weaknesses in order to make a profit, in order to benefit. So like bad faith actors online and drug dealers basically do the same thing. They basically have the same job because they exploit the algorithm, because disruptive discourse that creates arguments feeds the algorithm more and they get more out of it. Um, so it's much easier to get a larger audience through misinformation and disinformation than it is telling the truth and learning about facts and learning about information and learning about modern day psychological things like self-perception and stuff. I could explain the last bit better, but I messed up. But anyway,